Yeah, Chief, if you wanna dive into like first arriving companies.
Yeah, with our first arriving companies on Iuka, minimum staffed, summertime. It was one of the mornings where it's hot and humid already. 2 engines show up, and myself and a medic, and the 2 engines. Rick Callahan, right, minimum staff. He was 1 and 2, and Paul Richards. He was 1 and 2. Both worked in the area a long time, so their knowledge and feedback was phenomenal. But they were able to get inside, get good intel, and work through at least 2 bottles each. And this is not anything that everybody here hasn't been on fires where you work through multiple bottles. But we waited. We had to wait due to some equipment that was training. So our first ladder companies that were on scene to start getting the ventilation necessary to make headway on the inside and make conditions better inside for the engine companies operating was delayed, coming from a couple districts away, and that played into. And ultimately when we talk about adding the elements outside, the conditions inside, the coordination and the ventilation needed, and the work that's performed. And the one lieutenant, Paul Richards, who he was badged 2 at the time, I think, number 2 in seniority, and a Division I athlete, and always gave 110%. And waited until after, about the point we were ready to get a situation contained, and decided maybe. Right, some people thought maybe he should get checked out. So yeah, get checked out by the medic, and 15 minutes later, right there, he's definitely in the middle of a cardiac event, and on the cath lab, he went. But fortunately, that all worked out well, 100% recovery. And shout out to the medics that were there that did a nice job.
He also came back to work, right, Chief?
He did come back to work. He did come back to work
Hardhead.
for 2 more months,
Yep.
feeling better than he ever did before.
He got his plumbing cleaned out, so he's good to go.
Yeah, and we all got to keep in mind, right? When we work, if it's in the cold, if it's in the heat elements, even if it's in the spring and fall outside, when you work in these conditions at any age, checking on the crews, follow up at the end. A little bit of rehab, looking at each other and counting on each other, reading our demeanor, and at that point, right, get checked.
Sure.
So shout out to the guys that worked hard on this fire, made all the difference, and this is not much different other than the roof structure on the outside of what this house looked like. It's been completely rehabbed. It no longer has it no longer has a slate roof.
Yeah.
They took all that off and salvaged it for a shingle roof. But right, this is a historical home on campus, and they did a nice job.
I think it's just a testament, and it's across the city. And in my position, I've had the privilege of listening to a lot of different radio traffic. But our bread and butter is dispatch time to situation contain. It's 5 or 6 minutes, and it's insane because you look at photos like these and you're like, and we send a lot of apparatus to these fires, but just all the work that's entailed, it's just a testament.
Yeah, I'd be interested in seeing what it was on this one, but it wasn't 5 minutes.
No, not 2 bottles worth from your first
Yeah.
2 companies on the scene.
It's easy to make suggestions or command decisions, tactical decisions, and put those things into operation. But this, and like the others we've shown, right, it's on the backs of the guys doing the work, and it's impressive.
And I know, Chief, you hit on it like real briefly, and you and I have had these conversations too, as far, like we're riding out in the buggy, and it's so important who you're getting that information from, right? And that like details and clear communications, and being a squared away guy who cares about the job and puts some time in and knows what he's doing, those reports mean more, right? So when you get reports from PR or you get reports from Callahan, how much more valuable those reports are to you as a seasoned IC, truly, than me as a brand new company officer relaying that stuff to you.
Yeah, and I'll slip in real quick. You can edit this out if you want, but
I'm so excited.
Too late. It's live.
So we were sent on a report of a high-rise fire, which is pretty rare here. I mean, we get some events in high-rises, and it's the state office tower on a weekday before lunch, I think even. and pull up, and there's nothing showing, but atypical from what we usually go there. This building's emptying out. Highway patrol outside, putting people out on Broad Street. And they said the State Highway Patrol was reporting that there's a fire on, I don't even remember the floor, 20th, 24th floor, something. And people are coming out with concern on their faces. And so we start setting up, right? I mean, we have what we really would be.
Yeah. Benchmarks.
Yeah, and setting up and waiting to hear back, and people aren't stopping coming out. This is one of our larger high rises. And the radio feedback I got from an engine company on the inside, it finally made it up there. It's in a utility closet. It's out, but there's some smoke, maybe a sprinkler head going off. I don't remember all the details of it, but it was Billy, right, who teaches high rise, been downtown his whole career. And that, I thought, wow, this piece of cake from here on out now, right? Billy's up there. We're not going to burn the state office tower down today.
Did you leave the scene? You just left.
Well, I was thinking, yeah. What do you need up there? What a weird part of the story is it actually turned into almost a mass casualty because we end up, I think, with like 8 or 9 medics there and like 6 transports, because it turns out when you empty
a building with a lot of old people in it.
People and using stairwells. We had broken ankles. We had chest pains.
Yeah.
So it was.
Yeah, the fire was kind of secondary to all the casualties evacuating.
Yeah, that was eye-opening. It was great in hindsight to hear no issue with the fire. We're going to turn this into a major medical emergency.
And the value. Hearing Billy's voice on the radio.
Now that Mike brought it up, that actually one unit had, I don't know what it was with the 36th floor, I think, now that you brought it up, Mike. 36th floor has had 3 fires on it. One unit right before we came on, one unit 2 or 3 years after.
Thank you.
And then this one in the utility closet. And I don't know what it was with the 36th floor, but it was cursed. The first 2, they hadn't retrofitted sprinklers into it yet, so they burn out the entire 36th floor.
Yeah, that was the point of it for me, though, was hearing Billy's voice. You got that? Because we got a whole separate incident.
We got a whole other incident.
What you need.
Well, that's the nice thing about ICS, Mike. You can just pawn it off to medical command. You guys got that, right?
Make an EMS branch.
Yep, I'm still doing fire stuff. You guys got that.
Not to get, I don't want to, you guys are going to ruin our high-rise episode when we sit down. We're going to have to redo our whole game plan. So, but you guys highlighted it with IUCA is that not everything is always off an aerial, right? So we talk about ventilation, and we preach, and we see on the ladder page, and it's so important that, sticks in the air, and it's great stuff. Just because you can't reach it, or just because you have an aerial, maybe that's not always, your first go-to. So if I can get the wonderful computer to work, I'll throw another picture up, but I don't know if you guys can just talk about other options when ventilating the roof on these things. Oh, hey, there it goes.
There you go.
Just need to wake up that keyboard.
Yeah. Me and this computer are fighting today. Can you believe that? Oh, there's the mouse. There you go. Something like that.
Any fire that you highlight anyway, whether it's these Cape Cods or 1.5 or 2 1/2, ground ladders are always coming off. They're either going to second floor windows, they're going somewhere. So once you've established egress on all 4 sides for your crew members, then you may as well set up for the potential for roof operations if you can't get your aerial where you need it to go. And again, I'm an engine company officer playing ladder company officer. I'm still learning that job to some degree because I've always been assigned to engine companies.
Me too.
But fortunately, I've got an experienced ladder crew where they've ridden ladders pretty much their entire career. So I defer to a lot of their expertise. I can still hearken back to my rescue days. I can still do search, can still do forcible entry, and I can still yell at engine companies when they're not doing the right thing. So that all works out. But when it comes to throwing ladders and I don't have a ton of experience at that, so I count on those guys to make sure they're covering the areas that need to be covered.
Agreed, and I'm right there with you, Billy. Engine guy my whole career, fairly new ladder officer, but just know that because the aerial can't go up doesn't mean that we're out of the game. Vertical ventilation can still be accomplished. Obviously, we have a ton of ground ladders. We're going to have a secondary means of egress off the roof anyway if we're doing roof operations. That picture to the left is a real good picture there. Ground ladders are fast. We can get ground ladders there quickly if the aerial's not up or not able to be up. Sometimes the option is a ground ladder. It's sometimes faster. So just know that we're not out of the game just because the aerial can't go up.
Yeah, I was talking to Tyler Salisbury about this actually last night, kind of going through the slides and what we were going to talk about today. And, he said in 23s with their, smaller Cape Cods, ground ladders were their go-to. Cutting off of a bucket to cut low and cut high and put that bucket exactly where you need it maybe isn't your best option, because they trained a ton on ground ladders and single ground ladder deployment, like what's up there on the right, and just having that tool in the toolbox. It is worth noting though, if you do the picture on the right, make sure the fly is in and not the fly is out. Otherwise it creates a louver when you walk up to the top of the ladder and it can wiggle the base of your ladder out. So it was worth noting, we just wanted to throw it out there that there's other means of ventilation, right? With that being said, we wanted to move on to this next little topic, and there's we probably should do the math. There's 100-some years up here of Columbus fire experience, and I feel like every year or two we hear of that fire that doesn't go right. The guys that bailed down the stairs, whether it was Wyckoff and Kearns on Sycamore or Chief Kirshner over on the west side. We hear things don't go right. So I guess it's a twofold question of, can you guys walk us through some stories, some fires that weren't perfect, that didn't go well? What'd you take away from them? What'd you learn? And then what that fire changed for you moving forward as either a firefighter, a company officer, a chief, whatever it may be.
And while you guys are thinking about that, I just want to point out Billy's got a lot of seniority, and for you to say that from a humble perspective about not knowing everything on the ladder, and me as a junior officer, and this is for all the junior officers that are getting promoted. One of my first shifts was on ladder 10. I'm not going to tell Mike Lord Sr. or John Key how to do their job, but I'm going to utilize them.
Sure.
So I'm glad you said that, and I think it's something to be taken away, like don't let your ego get in the way as a new officer.
You absolutely are a fool if you don't lean on your experience that you have on your crew, right? I can remember floating around and going to different places when I was a new officer, and one of the first shifts I took when I came back as a relief officer on 2 unit was I got sent up to 13s. And I don't know the district. I don't know the guys. I've spent 5 minutes in Battalion 3. But I do know reputations.
Right.
And those are the guys that you lean on when you're there. And that's what I did.
I'll share a funny story about that real quick. Maybe you cut it out if you want, but my first full shift as a lieutenant, I was a floater in Battalion 1. I got promoted out of 2s and became a floater in Battalion 1 for 3 months. And my first shift as a brand new promoted lieutenant was in Greg Lash's seat on ladder 1.
Nice.
They put me out of class, and I distinctly remember I walked up to that truck in the morning, I laid my gear down outside the door, and I opened that door and looked at that chair and thought, I have no business being here. Like, I'm way out of my element. This is Greg Lash's seat, and here I am. And I climbed up in the truck to put my stuff on and looked across, and there's Doug Behrens is the driver for the day.
Perfect.
So, falls right back on what you were talking about earlier with who's there with you. And you look across the cab and see Doug Behrens, okay, it knocks the edge off quite a bit. So that's my story about my first day as a lieutenant.
What about you, Jess? Sorry to be quiet over there. You got any when you first got promoted?
I think it's using your crew is unbelievable, and I was very fortunate. I had coming up, I had great role models. Everybody sitting at this table. Chief Ruddle pushing me to get promoted when I was on Medigate, and I still share the story when guys are studying at 15s. And that one, I'd come back from a run, and we'd had 10, 15 runs on Medigate, and I'd want to sit down and watch TV, and you probably don't even remember this, but I sat down at 8, so I turned on the TV.
What are you doing sitting there?
Right, he looks right at me, he grabs the remote out of my hand, and he says, what are you doing? I said, Lou, I just want to, 5 minutes just to chill out for 5 minutes. You ain't going to get promoted sitting there. And then we got up and, but, got up and he went in the watch booth with me, and we started burning through flashcards. And so, just a side story to that, but role models are huge. And looking at who, Nick, you touched on the junior officer thing. I think looking at who you're going to try to model yourself after is a big one. And know that you're gonna make mistakes. As a new lieutenant, especially, you're gonna make mistakes. It's a new job. It's not the same job, and you're gonna do things, and you're gonna learn lessons for sure. If you go back to the Berkeley fire real quick.
Here, I'll put your picture up.
What a good
Good segue, Steve.
This is
Nice
a good
one.
one. This is a good one.
Nice one.
I can't wait to talk about it.
So on the Berkeley fire, there was a lot of lessons learned about how to operate, especially in knee wall fire and a hot attic and things like that. And I think everybody that day had learned a lot. But at 15s we have 2 medics, and so one thing we really hadn't talked about up until that fire was how do those 2 medics operate when they get to the fire. And I think that's something that each company hopefully has that discussion of what does the battalion chief want the medics to do on the scene, or some people will say they can help with supply lines. Some people will say they can get dressed and go in, whatever it is, as long as you have a plan. Well, at the point of the Berkeley fire, we didn't really have a plan yet. This wasn't something that I had thought about. And so on Medic 15 that night, we had firefighter Heigl at the time, not yet Captain Heigl. And on the other medic, we had Caleb Baker, not yet Captain Caleb Baker. And so they both get to this fire, and it was a good fire. There's in this picture, you can't see the fire coming
pattern.
out. Yeah, it was pretty good. Well,
we did have the captains that screwed up.
Well, again, lessons learned.
Lessons learned.
So Caleb and Ethan jump off the medics, and they both get dressed and run into the building.
Yeehaw.
Which at the time was actually helpful because it was a pretty difficult stretch. And it was just going to be me and Joe Panetta and Corey Utzi on the line. And so they jump on, and our stretch went really well. We flew right up the stairs. It was awesome. I was impressed. But at the time, I didn't know that I had Heigl and Caleb with us.
No wonder it went so fast.
It was like, wow, this is really great.
You guys stretch was great.
The first time I figured out that they were with us, I looked through the thermal imaging camera in the attic, and I could see Caleb over here pulling part of the knee wall, and I could see Ethan over there pulling part of it. Like, man, these guys, all right, well, I didn't expect that, but good deal. Well, they had a victim. He was just struggling to breathe. He wasn't critical or anything like that, but they needed to put him in a medic. Well, both the medics were up in the attic. So again, just picking on them now, and again, it's just lessons you learn. When we got back to the station, it was something where the whole crew, we got together, and I think that's one thing is talk to your crew when you're going to make a decision of how you guys are going to run. Whether you're the lieutenant or the captain, whatever, don't just say this is what we're doing. I don't care. Like, that's the worst thing you can do. We all sat down at the table, and Carmen DiCarlo, kind of guided it a little bit as we talked about what we were going to do and what we wanted the medics to do, and so we all got on the same page of what that was doing, and it gave that night Hee Haw Heigl was born and Cowboy Caleb because they just went full rogue. But
I don't remember any of this.
And Ethan's wife still loves Hee Haw Heigl, and I think still calls him that. But again, the point to it's a funny story at the time, and luckily it all worked out. But again, lessons learned, and Steve Sachs probably says it best, and of course it comes along with a story that I can't tell near as good as him, but you'll always learn more from your failures than your successes. And again, I'm not doing Steve's story justice by that. Of course, if he was here, we'd all probably still be laughing at whatever he told us.
Well, not to downplay our learning experience.
Your rogue attitude.
It was a little rogue. It was a little oopsie.
That might be a 17. I don't know.
Okay, let's get back and focus about tactics, right?
Is it like taxes? Can you go back 7 years?
Yeah, I don't know what the statute.
Well, if we went back 7 years, Ethan wouldn't be on the fire department.
I'll take that.
Wow.
But I think something to tell, or just something to go over, and maybe Steve can hit on it more with us, is while there was that part of it, there was a lot of stuff, us as, at the time, we were all brand new to 15s, that was our, core group at the time, kind of all got there at once, but, that was a fire where it was, and you hit on it earlier in the podcast as far as like, it was really hot, we couldn't find it, we backed down, flowing water didn't help. It's all these little indications that you guys have talked about for the past hour and a half that we took away from that fire. That's the first time you're like, ooh, it's too hot. Ooh, I can't see. Ooh, this is getting worse. And then, like, to have that experience with that group of guys as a new firefighter, just like I think, Billy, you might have said it, like, when we talk about dry heat, and until you feel it, you don't know.
Yeah.
But man, do you know, like, when you got it, and you'll never forget that for the rest of your life.
Those three things that you mentioned, Ethan, are classic signs of knee wall void space fire. High heat, zero visibility. No matter how much water you put on, it's not getting better. And you're not seeing where that fire is located. Easily, you should just go, holy, let's slow down. Let's back up a little bit. Let's start punching holes from a safe space, and let's start asking for vertical ventilation.
Because correct me if I'm wrong, Corey was flowing for a while on that fire.
Yeah, we opened up the line, and because it was all in the voids, we just weren't getting any relief.
Sure, all
up
you're
there.
getting was steam.
Yeah, we weren't getting anything.
You were
out
getting,
of,
getting beat up.
The little window that was on the front of this thing, it was just we took it out, but it wasn't giving us hardly any relief. So it was just it was all underneath us.
That's another thing that happens with void space fires is it's not burning the interior products yet, so it's only burning structure. So it's not the smoke color's different.
More brown.
Way more brown. Maybe not even pushing out of the attic windows, but pushing out of the eave line. Areas like that are almost dead giveaways.
Good place to insert the tactic from in Berkeley is an example too. But all knee wall void space fires. Chief Ronald mentioned earlier that he got a line position on the second floor in a knee wall fire. Sometimes going under it and heading for an exterior wall is the route to go. Get underneath it, pull ceilings. As a ladder company, if I hear Lieutenant Ross upstairs and hey, we're putting water on this thing, conditions just aren't getting any better, I'm going to shuffle myself down to the floor below it, get to an exterior wall, and start pulling ceilings in that void space and see if I can find it there.
And like Chief Rebel said, that's what that second line is for. Yeah, I'm protecting that egress, but I could still be an offensive weapon down there. I can still be proactive, just making sure it's coordinated with what's going on above it, right?
And you can give a lot of information too. If you're down below and you go through on those exterior walls, you go through and you hit finished flooring, they have finished that attic space all the way out to the edge of the eaves instead of just in the living space.
Yeah.
So
That's a distinctive feeling too.
It
right?
is, yeah. You'll never forget that shoulder pain when you hit that thing and it doesn't go anywhere.
Trying to remember here what I was going to segue into with that. With some lessons learned, and part of when I became really an outspoken advocate for more aggressive vertical ventilation. Was on a couple different instances, and sometimes it's related to the area you run in where, you got cars parked on both sides of the street and you just can't get the equipment where you want it. And the first ladder on the scene ends up being 3 engines away. And that was great to hear Steve say, and it's a testament to the new way of thinking and training that's going on with the ladder companies. Just because you're not close doesn't mean you're out of the game. And I've had more than a couple. I had a few that were frustrating because had engine companies inside trying to make a push. It's hot, right? The heat's increasing. We can't find it. It's in the knee walls. Smoke conditions are getting worse. You got guys inside. The clock's going off in your head. And you start asking for some vertical ventilation. If it's not there, we can't get the aerial close. The ladders are down the street. Is when it became more apparent to me, right? Let's start thinking about when you can't get the truck close. Fortunately, whatever truck is close is equipped with like the last picture we saw, right? You can start initially using the ladders off the engines if that's what's necessary. But what I learned was, right, you have to be able to make that reset, get everybody down. If you're not getting the ventilation you need, and we did, right, call companies out, call crews back down, reset, let's get accountability where everybody's at, what function everybody's doing, and then make a second push. And that's, sometimes those were the unfortunate times where I just saw, right, we were driven backwards and what we were trying to achieve by not being aggressive enough with vertical ventilation. But changing some tactics and some ways we do it, and things that were implemented from the beginning, from training recruits to doing more in-service training, has really paid off. But as an incident commander, I always try to encourage anybody, and if it's a lieutenant that gets there and has to take command, if it's Ethan, you're riding out of class, a new chief, is you got to be ready, have that card ready to flip over, right? Just let's regroup, right? Things aren't going the right way. They keep spiraling. Just regroup and let's figure out what's going on. And I thought now, with the way my mind works these days, what I was going to say after what you talked about, going back down to the second floor, heading to the outside walls, is remembering too, like when you got crews working above you, maybe the ladder's searching upstairs and you're on the second floor with a hose company, you can make those inspection holes without trying to tear down 4x8 sheets, right? A pike pole through the ceiling gives you enough, a visualization.
Visualization.
We got it.
Can you edit that in?
No.
Visualization of what you
So
need to
much
see.
editing.
Without, right, without opening up a source of air that's going to run the guys upstairs out. So yeah, you make inspection holes, but make what you need, right? You're not in full-fledged overhaul. But that changed a lot of thinking for me outside when I saw, I'd felt it before on the inside, but then seeing it from the outside. And I know I've been on one where I even, had to have Billy and his crews come out, and it's just don't be afraid to reset. You get life safety out of the way. You get that primary all clear, which is what's beneficial for us on a lot of these. We get the primary all clear, that changes the game, and we can start making decisions that are going to put us in less risk, but it's still dangerous. So you're not ever going to take it all away. But
I think it too, as a company officer, being able to make that call too. Just don't keep pushing a bad position. And this one, we weren't figuring it out, and it was getting worse and worse. And it made the call, hey, let's back up here a little bit, figure out we're missing something. I think I actually called out on the radio and just said, hey, Chief, we're going to back up a minute. We're missing something. We got to figure this out. And it just slowed down, and then start opening some things up, figuring out, is it below you? And like I said, with this one, we figured out that it was below us. But don't be afraid to make that call. It's not, everybody doesn't want to say, oh, it's too hot in here, we're getting out. Don't ever say that. But just
use your terminology carefully.
yeah, exactly right.
The one I was mentioning, because I saw that look on your face, it didn't help when we got sent to like 126 East Gates.
Oh, yeah.
And then after
Turned
about
out to be like
12 minutes later,
something.
it's like
1,200
numbers gates. So
And you're way
they
behind
gave it a little bit of a head start.
Yeah.
But
And we had already, we didn't know it, but we had already had a firefighter fall through the floor on engine 14 into the basement and then self-extricated himself,
yeah.
which was amazing.
Yeah.
Right? Because he found his way out and up the stairs.
Yeah, and again, like another edition of a podcast we should do with like some close calls or lessons learned, because you read a NIOSH report and it's like one bad thing after another happens.
It's never one.
No, and then you have incidents where you see things that happen 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we break that chain, and that was one, right? You had some tremendously experienced and talented firefighters there, and things happened for us that broke that chain, or it would have been.
Sure.
Right, I mean, fortunately, somebody like that, unfortunately, that anybody went through the floor, but anybody sitting here, when it's John Trant,
Yeah.
the guy knows what to do, and everything went his way, right? Immediately found a wall. That wall led to a set of
And
basement stairs.
He didn't fall into a basement that was fully involved with fire,
No.
because that,
Yeah.
I don't know if it's lucky or what, but that was a void space fire that had been burning between the drop ceiling and the floor for a while, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it weakened everything.
Basically,
that
like
first
had
floor.
carpet over the floor.
Yeah, carpet over nothing.
Yeah.
He went right through it.
Yeah. That wall led to the basement stairs. As he got at the top of the basement stairs, they
There's
just
a
happened to be
door.
forcing the door.
There was
it
a
flew
door
open
there.
right in front of him.
And
Yeah.
I can remember plain as day, ladder companies stepping over him like he had just fallen. He tripped or something like that. And here JT just self-extricated himself out of the basement, and guys are looking at him, like, what are you doing laying there? I had no idea he had fallen down in the basement already.
That had happened. What was it? Brand new 15s, and Tim Moore was the lieutenant there. And so you start out in the morning. You stay with me today. You stay right with me today. And then we ended up getting a fire on Lockhurst. And same thing. He went through the floor, and I had fallen through, but fell on like a floor joist had fallen into my
Did you jump in
armpit.
with him?
No, but I got ripped later because I
I'm
did.
going with you, boss.
So then Joe Cleary had kind of pulled me back out of the hole, and I said, the lieutenant just went all the way through the floor or whatever. And luckily, there wasn't any fire in the basement or whatever.
kidding.
But everybody was bringing everything. I mean, guys from the rescue 2 were throwing ladders into the hole and everything else. And then Tim walks out of the basement stairs and comes up behind. I think Kid Searle was the
What are you guys
the
doing in
chief.
there?
That's exactly what's going on right there. And
What
everybody's like turns around and sees him, and then I see him, and I'm almost crying, thinking,
give him a
God,
big hug?
I'm just brand new, and my lieutenant's gone. And the first thing he says to me is, I told you to stay right with me.
I knew that was coming.
I told you to stay right beside me, Steve.
So-
he was working on that for weeks to get a chance to say
Working on
that.
that line.
Yeah, he got me with that one.
Reset, and that house did have a half story on it, if I remember correctly. I think it was 1.5.
I believe it did.
When JT rolled out that side, because we pulled up, everybody got there, delayed response, as we were mentioning earlier. And you get there and somebody's alarm's going off, right? It was early. It was quick. It happened. They were on the first line going in. Somebody's alarm's going off on their air pack, right? Irritating me right away. I'm like looking over to say,
Reset your fast device.
yeah, move, do something. Until I realized that it was going off because he's laying face down on the grass and people are around him.
Stepped over.
Yeah, I looked back and when I realized he was out and okay and started to get a grasp on what was going on, I looked back and conditions were rapidly changing.
Yeah.
And that was one where I just decided, let's reset. Let's figure out what happened here. Let's get accountability of everybody and pull out. And it was a lot of fire in there. And we did. We just backed out, regrouped, and went back in. And nice job by the crews.
I think I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up, I know I've heard both Steves, or Captain Riley and Lieutenant Cheshire talk about, and it's one of the things I took away as a firefighter working with you is that radio traffic. I have enough people, right? We're talking about half stories and usually smaller stairwells or twisted stairwells with like a 180, and it's kind of tight up there, and it feels like all too often, because we don't get enough fire, it's a bullnose rush up there, and next thing you know, you're sitting with 2 engines, 2 ladders, and you got like 10 dudes trying to squeeze up this, 2.5 foot stairwell. I just remember it's one thing, I'd kick myself if I didn't bring it up, is that radio traffic of, Chief, we got enough guys, hold them, like nobody else. And I think that's stuck with me for sure, something to take away from these types of fires that I've heard both of you come over the radio with.
And I've heard Marshall has done that before, and the guys at Sevens are like, there's times where he just stand and step to hold people back. We've got enough people. Do you have a rule of thumb? Once I get 2 engines and a ladder interior,
I don't have a rule of thumb, but I like anybody that's crossing that threshold to have a purpose.
yeah.
Right? Because there can be, for somebody that's in that attic space, right, searching or whatever, and some ventilation is made, and it's getting hotter and darker, the last thing, and guys here have experienced it, I had it once, and I've heard other guys talk about it, when you're in those conditions and they deteriorate enough to where where it's driving you back down to the second floor and you can't get down to the second floor because there's somebody on every other tread, that is frustrating.
Yeah.
Right, and it's dangerous for the guys upstairs. So as much as we need everybody doing work, hump hose from the second floor or stay outside on a backup line, have a function inside. Because if not, if that guy needs to get down and he's delayed because it takes a while, right, the person on the landing may not feel anything.
No, absolutely not.
So they're turning around, progressing, picking up the line, and maybe Billy or Steve or somebody on their crew wants to get down yesterday afternoon, right? That person's coming down with motivation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I watched a fire many years ago. Frank Duff was still working downtown at the time. And he was a nozzle firefighter on one engine 2. And we had an attic fire in a Victorian, just right out on Town Street. Pretty good fire, really good fire. And Frank got up there, and I think he just got too hot. It wasn't a matter of crowded stairs, but he didn't want to touch any treads. He wanted out of there that fast, so he dove over about 3 or 4 people. Were you on then, Steve? Were you at that fire?
No.
I was going to think, I can't remember who all was there, but I know Bob Cloud was the lieutenant on the engine, and he just watched Frank come out of that attic over top of 3 people and then landed on the landing behind him. Because when your body says it's time to go, it's time to go. And you don't have a whole lot of control. And I think when we were sitting here before we even started, you brought up the Black Sunday fire, where those firefighters that jumped out of those windows, they didn't have a burn on them, but yet they still jumped out of a 4-story and actually all dropped 5 stories because it had a floor below grade where they all landed.
The heat's going to dictate for sure, and it's just something. You're right. Have a purpose. Everybody wants to work, right? And that's a good problem to have. That the people want to work. They want to get inside and do what they're trained to do, but have a function or just wait for where you're needed.
I would say the other side of that coin, if you're one of those company officers that's limiting the amount of people coming up, if you're going to limit somebody, make sure that whatever function they were assigned to, you're willing to do it, right? Because if I can't get in an attic and do an all clear, or I can't do an all clear somewhere I need to be because you say there's enough people up there, then you're going to have to relay that information for me. So be prepared to take on another task unless you're going to make sure you've got everybody up there that has a function that has to be fulfilled in that first 5 minutes after we get there.
And on a side note, I don't want Steve Cheshire to have to body surf over me on a set of stairs either.
You probably don't remember this one, but it's just for storytelling anyway. We had one on Carpenter, and I was pretty new, and it was me and Laura Elford were on the back engine 15, and Greg Battle came in and worked overtime. And the stairs on this thing were full. I mean, you could see from the living room, it was just firefighters on every tread going up the steps. And Greg, for whatever reason, wanted to get up there, so he got up there. And Laura's like, "We're not going up there." She just held me at the front. She's like, "We're just gonna stay right here." And Greg gets to the top of the steps. The next thing, you can hear all this commotion on the stairs, and somebody's coming down, and it's Greg running back down. And he's knocking guys off of the stairs as he's coming back down. And I'm thinking, man, it's got to be hotter than hell up there. Then there was a little dog up there that started biting the heck out of his leg. Greg comes running down the stairs, knocking people off the stairs just to get back down the living room. And I look over at Laura Elford, and she goes, "That's why we don't rush in."
Nice.
She was such a great mother hen to me, that's for sure. I was a young punk, and she definitely taught me a lot of life lessons.
So I guess as we kind of sort of wrap this up, and we're not rushing to be done by any means, but I guess we kind of go around the table. And I know we've been talking about doing the podcast now for like a week and a half, and everybody kind of has their notes and their brainstorms. So we'll kind of go around the table. If we not get to anything, closing statement, something to take with it. If you're going to pass one thing on, the floor is yours. Kind of, Captain Riley, you start us off.
No, I think we covered it really well. I think the important takeaways obviously are recognizing in the rundown that we have a half story, and immediately that cueing you to thinking about knee walls or void space fires. I think obviously that's important to us. You don't hear half-story a lot on rundowns anymore, but we still have those buildings, so it's just a good habit to be in. Cues everybody into what's potentially going on there. But train, of course I'm going to say that, and that's pretty cliche, but J.D. Vastbinder told me one time, and I'm not sure where he got it, but he said you can't train too hard for a job that can kill you. There's days where I don't really want to do much either, but I always make something happen because it's just that important. We don't do it a ton. We don't do it as much as all of us would like to. So train, work on it.
Nick,
Chief, I know you're-
I wanted to thank Nick and Ethan for putting this together and having the thought to do it. And that's why I signed up. I think it's important. It's something different than just a book or an activity on a training ground. And it reinforces in my mind what we all tell people when they come out, right, is the time you can spend sitting around the trucks in the bay, be it in the morning or around the kitchen table, is invaluable, right? That's where these conversations happen. Get with the people that have been out there, talk about stories, and listen what they've learned and how you can apply it. And for me, it's still just yesterday, right? Online. Today it's so much easier now to get online and start looking at sources, look at fires in other places, listen to what people have to say. Don't jump online and be the backseat quarterback as much as just look at it and think about if I'm on that tomorrow, right? If I'm at Station 7 and I see that tomorrow, if I'm at Station 14 and I see that tomorrow, how does that change the way I think in my role? And you can't ever stop learning, right? And develop it the best you can with that. Ask other people, hey, I found this yesterday. Have you ever been on one like this? You can get a wealth of information.
And it's not a matter of if, it's when, because we're in such a large city. And I'm a Murphy's Law guy, so anything that can happen will happen. And I've been almost burned for it just because we talk about it like this, and then the next day, inevitably, it happens. So I think that's
I forget about runs I've been on. They went good and bad, and you sit around and people start bringing them up. Like, oh, I do remember that one.
I do remember that.
Yeah, maybe I'll write that down.
What you got?
I think just find good mentors in this department. There's a lot of great mentors out there. Try to find them and pick their brains as much as you can. I was fortunate when I was getting ready to get promoted. We did a program where in the evenings, as a firefighter riding out as a top 5 on the promotional list, in the evenings you would go to a ladder company with a ladder officer, because a lot of times you're coming from a medic or something, you didn't have a lot of experience with the ladder. So I can't remember if that was either I think it might have been Chief Butcher that started doing that, or maybe it was Chief Cannell at the time, but I would take a pad of paper like what Billy's got here with me to all those stations, and I'd just sit down with that ladder officer and, hey, what do you think of this? What do you do in that? And I would just get really great information if I could, kind of hold him down. And I remember I took a trade. I didn't pay the guy back, but I took a trade on 3 unit at 8s just so I could sit with Truco for a day. And I sat with Mike on the front ramp at 8s, and man, I couldn't write fast enough. And I still have that pad of paper, and he was amazing. We were telling stories about him earlier. Amazing ladder officer. But
that's not in the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not, and again, it's a great job, and there's all these tools we can learn with now. But it's at the end of the day, it's still a very experience-based job. So we're going to lose a lot of experience here really quickly. Try to capture as much of that as you can, and so being able to sit here today, thanks you two for setting this up, but to sit with these guys that have been my mentors, it's good experience.
The great Billy Ross.
Speaking of the Grand Poobah himself.
Dude, I proved that I am the dumbest lieutenant on the fire department. So I finally made it to seniority #1 as a lieutenant. And all the times I took captain's test, I was just out of the running, so dumbest lieutenant there is. But you do get taught a lot of life lessons through this job. And a couple of them are, now we have technology in the palm of our hand. Before, we were writing addresses down on pads of paper, and when we got hacked, and we lost everything that we use, MDCs, all that stuff, all that information. It was eye-opening how much information and how we rely on those things. And I had to remind all the 20-somethings, I said, you guys remember there are things, ink, pens, and paper. You can write things down, right? So we got back to that, and it actually made you pay attention more, right? I know locution doesn't give you the stuff that our old dispatchers used to do. I mean, I can remember the PA cracking and the guys giving the address and then saying, we got several calls across the street from, reported people trapped. Locution doesn't say any of that.
Yeah, it gives the address.
But, you know, that was invaluable information. That just let you know what to expect. But brings me back to my phone and all of the information we get off of tablet command and pulse point and locations of hydrants and all these things.
Telestat being synced in with them.
Sure.
And that
Now
happened
you know who's there.
That happened a couple years ago too.
Now you know who's there. And a lesson I wanted to say about that is just 2 weeks ago, I went on a fire down on with Franklin Township, engine 17, 193s, ladder 10, ladder 2. And I looked at the comments and it said furnace fire. And like even 2 weeks before that, we were on a furnace fire that was just in the combustion chamber, put smoke through the house, no big deal. So I'm thinking, hey boys, furnace fire. We'll get there, we'll check this out. Well, when we pulled up, or when 193s pulled up, they said, we got heavy smoke showing, we got a working fire, we got a ranch. And because I couldn't see the second story, there was so much smoke. So just because pulse point or tablet command says one thing, does not mean that it's going to be an easy job. And we showed up, and it's awesome that you guys said this topic would be knee wall fires, because that's exactly what that place had. And I don't know how it got in there from the furnace, but it had knee walls, and I saw flames rolling down the eave line, and engine 17 was upstairs in the attic, and I followed him right upstairs, right behind Maddox. And of course, Mad Dog fits awesome in an attic space, so he's up there running the show, and I'm looking from the stairwell, because I can't get all the way up into there. I'm looking from the stairwell, and I put my camera up, and I see all those convected currents moving across the ceiling, coming from the Charlie side of this place. So I said, Mark, it's got to be over there on the Charlie side. And sure enough, they found a wall that separated it. All the fire was back behind there, and it worked into both knee walls. And you know, it's perfect, the tools that we have now compared to what we used to have. We used to just have to feel that, right? Because you weren't going to get any vision on it. But the lesson I would take away from this is don't always believe what you read on your comments. Sometimes they help you. Sometimes they might put you in a relaxed or
trust but verify.
Yeah, they might put you in that relaxed state where that's just going to be this, and you show up, and next thing you know, you're kicking it into high gear. So.
Well, I know, I can't speak for Nick, I speak for everybody. We can't thank you guys enough for spending time out of your day to come here. I think not only, yeah, sure, this was for training, this was, to kind of document and springboard something new and fresh, try something for the division. But I think, Lieutenant Cheshire hit on it, is there's also the reason certain people are sitting at that table, and it's to capture some of what they have to offer before they leave.
Mm-hmm.
You guys are getting to the end, and we're only getting younger, and we're getting less fires, and the more we can take from you guys and pass on and share. And if this podcast creates one discussion at one kitchen table that helps one firefighter,
It
will be worth every bit of time, effort, and energy. So I just want to thank you guys for coming out. I appreciate that. I can't even express how much I appreciate Nick letting us use the platform to do this kind of joint venture, and hopefully this is the first of many to come for the rest of the year. So I appreciate the crap out of you guys.
Yeah, I want to thank James too and Trent for making you guys not look as big as you really are.
Well, there are a ton of topics that you can have in here.
There's already
From tactics to building construction to whatever you want it to be.
ladder operations.
Ladder operations, of course, you've got to have that in here.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Mid-rise. You know, for the longest time, the only videos we see on Target Solutions and things like that are the old ones that we did with hose stretching and things like that. I would definitely like to see rescue company operation. I want to see ladder company operations in those videos and make them those 10-minute videos so that we can, you know, you can convince that crew to sit down, let's watch this. Now let's go try this kind of thing. Yeah, let's go apply it. And you have this training academy after 4 o'clock in the day on weekdays, weekends. You have this academy at your disposal. Get down here and use it, because there's so much stuff out there that, yeah, I know we're not doing under fire conditions, but that doesn't matter. Captain Lash, another thing that he told me, one of his, of course, he loves reading, he digests everything. And Greg said one day, and he quoted it from somebody else, I'm sure, he said, amateurs practice till they get it right, professionals practice so they can't get it wrong. And if we're professional firefighters, we need to be putting in the time and the effort so that we don't screw it up when we show up.
Yeah, since I know you wanted us to talk tactics, and then you let us ramble on about some other things, I did have written down, I wanted to bring down just real quick, when we're talking about tactics with knee wall fires again, getting extra resources there when it's appropriate or early on, and start thinking about salvage. Right, it takes a lot of people to do significant salvage, and everybody here, right, will speak to it, that when you have a good knee wall fire or an attic fire, you're using a lot of water, right? You're doing a lot of damage, and to protect the stuff, you know, these people's belongings is an important aspect. And usually it's caught, right, when somebody's standing around on the first floor and water from the third floor now is coming through the ceiling fixtures, a light's on in the ceiling, right, or whatever. So start thinking about it early, utilize the medic crews to assist with like the outside ladder operators, and start getting some plastic and get some stuff gathered up. It makes a big difference. I know on the Iuka fire in particular, we were doing salvage and just happened to protect and save, which matters this year in particular, the Brutus outfit. So, right.
It's funny you brought that up, because when I did an episode with Lash, and I think you were there, he touched on that. He said we kind of lack in property conservation, and a lot of this is all these our citizens have maybe, and like winter is a good example. The only thing that homeowner cared about was his pets, and we got 5 of the 7 out of there, and that meant a lot to him. So whether it's a lockbox or a book, a family Bible,
I know
it means a lot to people.
Bill Grubb retired out of AIDS, obviously you guys worked with him. He taught our salvaging overall in the academy, and for everything that Bill was, it was so much fun. As I will always remember one story from him, and this is quick, I promise, is he would talk about salvaging overall, and he would talk about, I don't care if my house catches on fire, I don't care if my house burns down, if it gets flooded. He goes, just remember what's meaningless to you is the most important thing in the world to somebody else. He goes, if you went through my whole house, I don't care if you break everything with a hammer. He goes, but I have one picture in my hallway, and behind that picture is a copy of my dad's final heartbeat from his EKG. And I think he said it was in the picture frame or attached to the picture frame. He goes, nobody knows it's there but me. He goes, and I don't care about anything else in that house except that one picture. And to us, how often do you walk down the hallway and bump it, smash it, knock it over, and you don't think a world, you don't think anything of it. But I will always remember that story from Bill Grubb, which is what's meaningless to you might be the most important thing to me. And Chief, I'm super glad you brought it up, because that's it, right? Because we flood these houses out when we have a good knee wall fire.
Chief Devine told me one time, people, pets, pills, and pictures. He said, if you walk past any of those things, grab them. People, pets, pills, and pictures.
And that's why we're there.
I think that's a really good segment to wrap up on.
Yep.
So we appreciate the heck out of
Yeah,
it.
thank you guys.
Nick, you gonna signal it?
No. We got better traffic for that. For a couple.
That's usually the ladder company needs to signal anything, so
I may
we're the
or may
last
not-
ones there.
I may or may not have Divine on some radio traffic. So.
Perfect. Got it. Appreciate it.
Thank you guys.
Thanks.
All right, thank you.